50 miles away in West Yorkshire, the local MP was struggling to get the attention she'd hoped for.
I probably went to see the police about once a month over a 12, 18 months period, and they always had a new excuse for not doing anything. I followed it up with the head of social services at that time, and she told me, well, there's not a great deal we can do because these children are not in care. They're with their parents, and therefore it's the responsibility of the parents, not of the local authority.
Church leaders from across West Yorkshire have signed a statement calling on voters to reject the British National Party at the local and European...
With little interest from the authorities, Anne Cryer decided to appeal to community leaders who might be able to intervene. As this was a particularly sensitive issue, she turned to an intermediary.
I approached a local Muslim Labour councillor. I had him come in and listen to the story of these women. He was clearly very moved by their stories. I asked him, would he be prepared to take this list of young men down to the mosque after Friday prayers and see the elders. I'd wanted them to make it clear that in the view of the elders, they are behaving in a totally un-Islamic way, and it will bring shame on them, on their family, and on their religion if they continue to behave in this way. He went down, he saw them, he gave them the list. They all looked at these lists and they all agreed, yes, they knew all the lads, they knew the families, they knew where they lived, everything about them. And then they said, really, it's got nothing to do with us. End of story. I was horrified and disappointed. The BNP were becoming active and they were going to have a field day on this. I didn't want that to happen. From then on, I started to try to get the media involved.
Despite a local petition asking voters to say no to racism, the BNP now has a toehold in Yorkshire, with more seats being contested in the forthcoming May elections.
The key point of the press release was that the men who were doing this to these girls were, I think the word used was, from the Asian community. I spoke to Anne Cryer's researcher. She told me that the scale of this was far greater than they'd been able to say in the initial press release. They'd identified over 30 men who were involved. The idea of young girls, 13, 14, being befriended by lads who weren't much older than them initially and then introduced to a wider and wider circle of friends, the idea that this was in some way a collective activity, that girls were being passed around men, I'd not encountered anything like that before. I remember so clearly the feeling of how on earth do you report a story that is a fantasy for the far right. It's everything you could wish for if you're pushing a particular agenda. It's innocent white girls and it's evil, dark-skinned men.
The government's failure to control asylum and immigration was a force for bad.
Norfolk's fears were not without foundation.